to Roy's Book Reviews. In this video, I am going to discuss my thoughts about 4 novels. These books are not related to each other in any tangible ways. They are not by authors of the same race, or same gender, from the same country, or anything like that. They do not address the same themes. I'm connecting them because each of these books is what I consider to be the best of the best writing that authors have given us. These are 4 of my favorite books of all time, so I decided to put them together in a compilation here. The first one is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. She's a relatively new author on the scene. Novelists like Jesmyn Ward don't come along very often. Only truly special writers can slip readers beneath the skin of a character, make them feel as if they are experiencing the events happening on page firsthand. Reading Salvage the Bones, one is drawn into the oppressive summer heat of Louisiana, aches with helpless desire, is burdened by a stifling sense of loss, vicariously goes through youthful yearning to be loved, even if only as much as a treasured pet. Prior to the arrival of Hurricane Katrina, the pace of the narrative is slow and steady. We wait for the inevitable devastation to arrive, knowing far more about what is to come than the family we're observing up close. A motherless girl lets the local boys take what they please from her until she meets one that she wants something back from. She is a lone woman in a world of men, and it is through her eyes that we pass idle time waiting, watching, remembering, wishing for what is plain will not be, settling for whatever she is able to grab hold of. This girl does not get placed on a pedestal like her brother's prized dog, but like China, she is able to nurture when called upon, ready to fight tooth and nail for survival when necessary. Read this book and read anything that Jesmyn Ward writes because she is a true talent, and like I said, she is relatively new on the stage of writing. She's pretty young, which means we have many decades of incredible books from her to look forward to, most likely. And I'm looking forward to the next book of hers that I read, but I am going to move on to a book by a different author, Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which is an excellent novel that wonderfully blends science fiction with literary fiction. The science fiction aspect is pretty spare, for although the concept of time travel is critical to the narrative, Octavia Butler does not go into much detail about it. It simply happens for reasons that are left unexplained. Why bother explaining the impossible anyway? Doesn't make it any more plausible. But she does make it make sufficient sense for readers to accept. The main character of Kindred is Dana, a black woman recently wed to a white man in the year 1976. Dana needs to keep an ancestor of hers, who is white, from dying on a few separate occasions throughout the course of his life in order to sustain the family lineage that will eventually lead to her. She doesn't need to keep Rufus, who she first meets when he's a boy, alive to a ripe old age, just long enough for him to impregnate the woman who will give birth to the earliest relative that Dana is aware of having. The extremely unfortunate thing for Dana is that the time period she's repeatedly transported back to is America's period of mass production by slavery. She has no control over when she'll be called back in time. Rufus summons her subconsciously, and perhaps consciously as he grows older, whenever he's in grave danger. Dana is able to return to 1976 only when her own life is in immediate peril, something that usually, but not always, is beyond her control. The amount of time she spends on the plantation does not match the length of time that she is whisked away from her real life. Months in the past correspond to the passage of a couple hours in 1976 on one trip. On another trip, 2 weeks in the present correspond to 3 months in the past. So the connection is arbitrary, which is fine, for as I said, this book isn't really focusing on the time travel aspect. It's about the kind of time travel that affects all of us, because reality dictates that what happened in the past impacts our present and shapes our future. And as we learn more about our past and discover what had previously been unknown or misunderstood, our present understanding of the world adapts and generates a different future than the one we were previously headed towards. So that is what I have to say about the novel Kindred. Now I will share my thoughts on a book that I consider perhaps the greatest book ever written, Love in the Time of Cholera, by Gabriel García Márquez. This novel defines undying passion on page as well as it can be done, in my opinion. Others may as well quit writing about love because the bar has been set as high as it's ever going to be set. Of course, this won't happen because nothing can stop people from falling in love, and no one can stop writers from chronicling the near impossible to truly describe experience. If you are capable of desire to a catastrophic proportion, this book will speak to you like none other. If you are not, oh well. A wise man once stated that the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. Love in the Time of Cholera is for people who may also experience great desperation in their lives, but they're damn sure not going to be quiet about it. I will add a disclaimer that if the subject of stalking is a trigger for you, this may not be the book for you. As an old perfume ad campaign went, between love and madness lies obsession. While you may conclude that the protagonist of this novel is a passionate romantic, a valid claim can alternately be made that he is an obsessed stalker. Depending on which camp of interpretation you're in, you may find his behavior inspiring or you may find it troubling. If you find it troubling, I suppose you would love this book somewhat less than I did, even while also acknowledging that it is brilliantly composed. And the next book that I am going to speak about, fourth and final one, is The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Díaz. This book is a true wonder and treasure, the very definition of a 5-star read. I'm placing it in the exalted position of one of my 3 favorite books of all time, sitting alongside The World According to Garp and Love in the Time of Cholera, which I just spoke about. It is a magnificent chronicle of a Dominican-American family and the fuku that haunts them throughout generations, with its main focus on poor Oscar, a heavy-set nerd personified in eternal search for love, preferably the variety that is accompanied by sex. The narrative jumps back and forth in time, telling several marvelous stories in non-linear fashion within a single tale. Oscar's sister Lola, the sister is narrated by a boyfriend, who is also Oscar's closest friend, and their mother, and the cousin who raised her and Oscar's biological grandfather, each take turns at center stage before returning the spotlight once more to Oscar. As a Pulitzer Prize winner, one expects masterful writerly prose, and this book does not disappoint in that regard. But it is also a skillfully rendered contemporary feeling novel the type of writing that one might expect to find in an urban novel. And it also reads as a polished piece of historical fiction with footnotes galore. This book gives you everything you could expect to find in a literary masterpiece and then some. It will break your heart while simultaneously making it soar, because above all else, the brief, wondrous life of Oscar Wilde is about the most valuable possession any human being can hold: hope. So, that is all I have to say, except run out, grab yourself a copy of Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward, The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Díaz, Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel García Márquez. You'll be very happy that you did.